Hello. First things first, before we get started, I would like to apologize for any audio mishaps or shitty audio. I literally just bought this mic for $5, I think. I just bought this mic for $5 from Five Below, so it literally plugs into my phone. Anyways, hi, my name is Celeste, and I am just a girl who likes books. I hated that intro. I read books, and I have a lot of thoughts about the books that I read. That's why we're here. If you are looking at this channel and you see a bunch of K-pop videos, no, you didn't. Don't even bring them up to me. I didn't feel like making an entirely new channel for this video. So, and I'm leaving them up. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm leaving them up. They're from when I was like literally a teenager, so I don't want to hear it. Today we are going to be discussing the Crescent City series. I know the series isn't even nearly complete, but I just finished the first two books, House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath. Within the past 2 weeks, it's Tuesday today, and to put it in perspective, I finished House of Earth and Blood 2 Fridays ago, and I finished House of Breath and Sky last Saturday, so 4 days ago, okay? And I have just been reeling ever since I finished them, kind of in those like post fantasy genre series slumps where you spend so much time in like a world or with like a bunch of characters and you just don't know what to do with yourself. You feel like you can't like move forward with your TBR without processing what you just read. Like the next book on my to be read is literally It Starts With Us, and how the fuck am I supposed to move on and just read It Starts With Us after reading Crescent City? First things first, a bit of a warning. This video is going to be quite literally word vomit. Second warning, obligatory spoiler warning. I am going to be talking about my likes and my dislikes about the Crescent City series, and to do that fully, I have to talk about plot points and spoilers. So right away, I'm just going to say spoiler alert for just Sarah J. Maas in general. If you haven't read any of her books, go read them and then come back if you really want to hear my thoughts on them. Or if you don't really care, cool. Stick around, listen to me talk. Why you would want to do that, I have no idea. But, so a little bit backstory. I read the ACOTAR series earlier this year for the first time. I was in a huge reading slump for like seven years. So I missed a lot. Okay. I know the ACOTAR series came out in like 2013 was the first book, I think. I was not on the train, but I read the first book, I think in April, and then I finished Court of Silver Flames in July, I think, or June. I finished it in June. Similar reading slump to what I'm having now, where I just didn't know what to do with myself. I read, what is it called? I don't even have it because I lent it to a friend. A Game of Retribution by Scarlett Sinclair right after, and that was a mistake. And then I read Beach Read right after. Not a mistake. I love that book. But then I was like, I want the fantasy back. I want to fall into like a world that isn't ours, because this world feels like literal hell. And so in August, I started House of Earth and Blood. And I didn't finish it until literally like the third week of October, because God, was it hard to get through that first part of the book. Let's start with this baby right here, House of Earth and Blood, what I was just talking about. to get into it. So our story is about a half human, half fae woman named Bryce Quinlan. In the story, when it starts, I should say, Bryce is 23 years old. Our story takes place in Lunethion, or how I will be referring to it as Crescent City, because that is a word that I can say. Bryce is a assistant at an antique store, Griffin Antiques, and she works for, like, I think a witch named Jezebel, who just does a bunch of illegal shit, you know, sells a bunch of stuff that the government doesn't want her to. But Bryce is like a strong, independent woman. She's a working woman, who also just happens to be the daughter of the Autumn King, the king of the Fae. And the Autumn King doesn't like claim her as a daughter. She doesn't claim him as a father. So she's like technically royalty, but she's not. Bryce, at this point in the first part of our story, lives with her best friend Danica, who is a wolf shifter. Wolf shifter, whatever. Danica is the alpha to the pack of devils, who is also the granddaughter of the prime of the wolves. She's an important person in the wolf community. And the pack of devils is like essentially like, I think like a task force or security or cops in Lunethion. They like protect stuff. People respect them. And like Danica is essentially like, she's not a figurehead, but she works with figureheads, and she's like kind of an important person. And so essentially all we know at this point at the beginning of the story is that Bryce hates her dad. She has a human mother named Ember and a stepdad named Randall. I believe his name is Randall. And a best friend, Danica, who she lives with, and Danica and her just got matching tattoos. Cool. They get drunk and they do a lot of drugs together. So classic 23-year-olds in a big old city. I like to think of Lunethion as like New York of like the Fae world. Again, so this, if you've read like ACOTAR, I haven't read Throne of Glass, so I'm sorry if I like miss things from that series, but like I'm gonna be kind of comparing this series a lot to ACOTAR, because that's the only like other Sarah J. Maas exposure I have. But like if you think of ACOTAR with like their Fae, it's like kind of old. I almost said like old people Fae. Old Fae, like they don't have cell phones and they like churn butter and stuff still. Whereas in like Lunethion, it's modernized. Like everyone has a cell phone, and there's like tabloids and drugs and clubs and cars and a moped that Bryce rides, which is like the most uncool thing that she could choose. Yeah, there's cameras, it's a modern world. It's not the Amish community of ACOTAR. So, yeah, that is kind of the basis of our story, the setting that we are in. And for some reason, like Bryce and Danica, like they're like this. Kind of. As our story progresses, we get to the dreaded chapter 5, where quite literally after a night out of just fucking obliterating her system and her kidneys from just drugs and alcohol, Bryce shows up to her apartment drunk as shit, shows up to a demon in her apartment with Danica, where Danica and the pack of wolves were having like a pack night, I don't know, like fucking a sisterhood or something, in their apartment, and this demon showed up and just absolutely shredded the shit out of them, like literally turned them into like shredded chicken for a shredded chicken sandwich, like absolutely obliterated these wolves. And among the pack of devils was this I think like her second in command, Danica's second in command, Connor, who had this raging boner for Bryce, who he had just like literally confessed his love for her. And Bryce was like, okay, I'll go on a date with you, but she has sex with some lion shifter in a club. And so in her mind, she's like, holy shit, like this dude just told me his love for me. I had sex with this lion shifter and now he's dead. Oh my God. And also like all of my other friends and my best friend who I live with and love so deeply, they're all dead. And so she walks in and she's, again, high on like 6 different drugs. Bryce, what the fuck? Like, this is where we meet our secondary character and romantic interest, Hunt Athalar? I don't know. In the alleyway while Bryce is trying to help this random dude who's getting absolutely obliterated by this demon. And Hunt, as we learn, is like an angel cop. He's an angel. We know that much. I think he's like a detective. I'm going to call him a detective. He's technically like an assassin, but he works for this archangel Micah, who like answers to these beings called the Asteri. I'm going to call them the Asteri, who are like literally, I think, like stardust. They're quite literally dust. Essentially, they're old as shit. And I think they're like gods or something, but the archangels work for the Asteri. Under the Asteri are like just regular angels. And Hunt is like enslaved. Essentially, Hunt, like, he's old. He's like Edward, old, like 200 years old. And Hunt tried to assist the humans in an uprising like 200 years ago. So to pay for his crimes, because it was him and like his lover at the time, Shahar, they both kind of fucked it up. And Shahar died. Hunt was still alive and was a slave because the Asteri were like, dude, not cool. Now we're gonna own you for the rest of your life. So you messed up there, dude. And somehow, some way, he got into the hands of Sandriel, who comes up later in our story. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but she was like, was like basically a demon in human form. She's so mean and like torturous, and just, she's a psychopath. I'll tell you that much. She's a psychopath. Hunt was sold by Sandriel to Micah, who is now the archangel, and Micah and Hunt essentially have this like deal where Hunt can like earn his freedom by being an assassin for him and killing for Micah the amount of people that he killed in the uprising, which I think was like 200 people, 2,200 people, and Hunt has only killed like 82 people. So Hunt is absolutely doing shit at this deal. So yeah, so essentially he has to be a cop to like earn his freedom back. And most of the angels in what is called the 33rd, which is, I think, their precinct or whatever, are in debt to Micah. They're basically Micah's slaves. Like, Micah owns them. There's literally like a tattoo across their foreheads, I believe. I don't know if it's just Hunt. Well, I know for this much. Hunt has like this tattoo of like thorns. Like, it's supposed to be a halo, but in all of the fan art I've seen, it literally looks like the crown of thorns that Jesus wore or whatever. So interesting imagery, Sarah J. Maas. Interesting. And they all have like a tattoo on their wrist that's like basically a slave tattoo. I don't know. When you get bought or freed, it just dissipates into your skin. Fast forward 2 years. This is what the book does. Like, Hunt and Bryce don't come in contact at this time, when Bryce is like being interrogated. This is when we meet Danica's piece of shit mom, Sabine, who is like a big wolf lady. I think she's like an alpha too, technically. I don't know. Again, I don't really know the wolf politics. There's so many things in this book. But yeah, Sabine essentially hates Bryce. And like, one of the weird things about like Bryce being half fae, half human is that she's just constantly hypersexualized. Like, I'll tell you that much. She's either being called a literal whore or a slut, or people are like, hey, will you be my whore or slut? You know, like, either they want her to like do sexual favors, or they're like demeaning her for like sexual favors. So it's like come on, guys. Like, what do you want her to do? Like, anyways, Sabine sucks. We meet her. It's whatever. I kind of skimmed it because I was like, man, she's really fucking mean. The story skips about 2 years, I believe. Now Bryce is, 25 or something? And we learn that Bryce is, of course, depressed as shit because she lost literally, like, nearly all of her friends. All she has left is her friends Juniper and Fury, who Juniper still keeps in contact with her. She's, like, a fawn shifter and a dancer that Bryce used to dance with, but ever since Danica died, Bryce doesn't dance. Yeah, that's called depression. And Fury, who is, I think at this time, Juniper's girlfriend. Like, I think they're dating at that point. I don't know what the fuck Fury is. I don't think Bryce knows what Fury is, but I think she's an assassin. She is what is called veneer. Veneer, essentially, like, non-humans. Like, in this world... I kind of forgot to, like, explain. In this world, there's veneer and there's humans. Humans are essentially just slaves. Like, the veneer, for the most part, are like, well, you don't do anything for me, so I own you. And the veneer are, like, literally anything that's not human. In this world, there are so many, like, anything you can think of, there is. Like, a fawn shifter. Did there need to be a fawn shifter? Can she just not be, like, fae or something? I don't know. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot of things. But Fury, we know, is veneer. I'm pretty sure. And that's literally all we know about Fury. But ever since Danica's death, Fury and Bryce have kind of fallen out of touch, mostly because Fury just doesn't answer her calls. And so Bryce is, a little sad. She has no one to go to. And all she does is kind of work. She still works at the antiques shop for Jezebel, where she has her little cat Shrinks, who he's supposed to, I don't know what kind of animal he was supposed to be, like, mythical creature. I just imagined him as this big fat orange cat. And then there's also Lahaba, who is a flame sprite who is owned by Jezebel, kind of similar to how Hunt is owned by Micah. And Lahaba is, like, the keeper of the books. She, like, makes sure the books don't, like, go out of order or, like, fuck shit up, because the books, they're banned, essentially, and illegal, and they, like, have minds of their own, and whatnot. So Lahaba kind of just keeps after the books and is, I don't know, she's kind of like security, I guess, but she's, like, this big. And Bryce is still doing all of her, like, shady dealings with, like, the buyers of Jezebel's illegal shit that she works for the Underking. So there's a lot of, like, hierarchies in this book. So Jezebel works for the Underking, who is, like, a crime lord, I think. I don't know. And under Jezebel is Bryce, who is her assistant. And so one day Bryce is going to this, like, club, and she sells something to this creepy vampire dude. Don't even remember his name because it doesn't really even come up. I think his name's Maximus. And so she meets with this guy, and like I said, he was super creepy to her. And this is where we fully meet Rune. We know of Rune, but Rune is Bryce's half brother. He is the Fae Prince. He's the Fae Prince. I don't know what I was gonna. He is the Fae Prince. He is the chosen prince because he is also what they call starborn, which essentially means that he was born with a star in his heart. I don't know. He's got light coming from him or some shit. But it's not a lot of light. So when I think of, like, starborn, like, what I imagine starborn is, like, think of Avatar: The Last Airbender when Aang went, like, full Avatar and his, like, arrows and his eyes and his nose and his mouth were, like, pouring out with light. That's what I imagine starborn is. And, like, Rune is, like, a little, like, tinkle on his little twinkle on his fingers. That's all he has. But he has the star sword, which is what it sounds like. It's a sword for people who are starborn, and it, like, works for them or whatever. And it, like, sings, kind of. Like, it makes noises and, like, hums when it's in the presence of someone that it wants to be around. Kind of similar to, if you've read A Court of Silver Flames, similar to how the dagger that Nesta makes, like, hums for her, because she's, like, they're made from the same whatever, like the cauldron or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean, right? Right. That makes sense. And so we meet Rune, and Rune and Bryce, we learn, met each other, I think when Bryce was like 13 or something. They didn't grow up together, but we know that they've known each other for at least like 10-ish years. And in that time, they had a falling out. And basically, Bryce, who was like stubborn as shit, just refuses to accept like Rune's apologies. And Rune, he's the older brother, so he kind of tries to get in her good graces, assist his sister when he can. And Rune is like, dude, what are you doing? Like, that's illegal. Oh my gosh. And Bryce is like, whatever, fuck you. I'm gonna do what I want. And Rune's like, well, be safe. I'm gonna follow you home. So that's where we kind of get this, like, he is a protective older brother, but Bryce is like, she's a grudge holder. She's stubborn, and she's like, fuck you, leave me alone. Whatever. Rune does come back, so that's why I kind of described him a little bit more. And literally, like, that night, Bryce goes home, and Maximus, that creepy vampire, like, dies in the same way that Danica did. So in the whole 2 years, nothing really happened since Danica's death, but now Bryce, like, meets with someone, and it's happening again, like, in the exact same way. The ribboning of someone's body getting shredded like a chicken. So the 33rd are like, holy shit, it's happening again. And this is when Micah, this book is in third person POV, and it like jumps all over. We go back to Hunt, where Micah is like, hey, I need you to like figure out this murder. And if you do figure out who the murderer is, I will shave your debts down to, I think, like 10 deaths. So again, Hunt's debt is like 2,200 people that he has to kill. He's only killed 82. So 10 people might still take him like 10 years to do, but like it might work. So Hunt is like, okay, so I will figure out this murder. And Micah's like, but you have to work with Bryce Quinlan. And Bryce Quinlan is a known like party girl, and like Hunt is essentially like, oh my god, this is gonna fucking suck. And so before Micah and Hunt go approach Bryce for like getting her involvement, because essentially the bottom line is Bryce has been close to now 2 of the murders, and either Bryce is like doing shit, or someone is out to get Bryce. So either way, she is kind of a close person to be around to solve this murder. But before they do that, we kind of switch over to Rune, who is like talking to his father. We find out that Rune also doesn't like his father, because apparently his father is just a literal piece of shit, and you know, he's just a bad dad. And we found out that Rune essentially knows, because when Fae are like, I think 13 or something, they go to the Oracle to learn their futures. Mostly parents want their kids to do it. And the Oracle tells Rune that his royal bloodline will end with him. So Rune either thinks that he is infertile or will die before he has kids. So, and he only told his father that he was going to be like a strong and fair king, and that would like produce a good heir. So his dad was like, okay, whatever. That was kind of boring. While Rune is over here like, I lied. Anyways, so don't kill me. We also find out that the Autumn King wants Rune to find the horn. Luna's horn, I think is what it's called. Luna's horn? The horn? Whatever. So the horn is something that went missing, I think, a couple nights before Danica died, and Danica was in charge of keeping it safe. So it kind of like disappeared on her watch. And it's not, at this point in the story, like there's like 2 mysteries. Where is the horn, and who killed Danica? And so Hunt and Bryce, like, they meet, and Bryce is like, I'm not working with him. Hunt is like, oh god, this is gonna fucking suck. And Jezebel was like, you know what, like, yeah, Bryce, you can work on them with this. So she essentially was ordered by her boss to help the 33rd. So their goal is to figure out who the murderer is, while Rune is trying to figure out where the horn went, because the horn is like also related to Starborn stuff. It was like used to close the rift between the world and hell, where like all the demons and stuff lay. And it's got a lot of power, but you have to be starborn to use it, and it's broken. So Rune is like, why the fuck do you need this? And like his father's just like, just get it for me. Essentially the Fae King thinks that it will like bring back the Fae's powers if they have the horn. I don't know. So Bryce and Hunt are kind of like working together now. Hunt stays like on the rooftop across from Bryce's apartment. It's kind of like a forced proximity trope, so neither of them are very excited for this like pairing, but they're like, well, we have to. It's like we agreed to do this job. And in this time, like, since Bryce works for Jezba, who has this antiques store and also like a forbidden library of like literal banned books that were not supposed to be in print, Rune is like, hey, our dad, who to everyone else thinks, like, everyone thinks that Rune is Bryce's cousin. So they think that like Bryce is like secondary to the royal family, despite the fact that she is actually in the royal family. So to Hunt, Rune is Bryce's cousin, but obviously Rune is Bryce's brother. But Rune is like, hey, I need your archives because I need to figure out what this horn is. And Bryce is like, I don't know. And like gives him a bunch of shit, but eventually she agrees. And so him, Hunt, and Bryce kind of start to become a little bit of a trio, which was actually a part that I really liked about the book. But in this time of them like hanging out in the archives, Lahaba is like helping them. We find out that Rune finds this like book because he was like, well, maybe I'm starborn, this book will jump out at me. He finds out that the starborn king, the first one, who what's his name, Prince Pelias, who is the like first starborn king, used the horn to seal the rift from hell, which he was like his last dying act, because he was killed by this demon called the Crystallos, which the Crystallos was like a direct like contradiction, I guess, to the horn, or like hell's way of meeting the horn's power. And it was created by the Prince of Pit, the demon Prince of Pit, who is also called the Star Eater because he literally killed one of the Asteri. So there's like 7 princes of hell, and there were 7 Asteri, but now there's only 6 because the Prince of Pit like fucking killed him. And yeah, so the horn is actually a very valuable thing to have, but again, it's broken. So Rune is still like, okay, I can see why it's needed, but it's broken. Like, my dad is just like a fucking idiot. And Bryce is like, yeah, dad's stupid. I mean, my uncle is stupid. And Hunt's like, okay, whatever. On the like Danica murder hunt, Bryce thinks that the Viper Queen might have had a hand in the murders. So the Viper Queen is like another, like, I guess like crime lord. Her like area is like the meat market or something, where she like sells drugs. She doesn't sell drugs, but she oversees a lot of drugs and like illegal fights and just a bunch of illegal shit. And they think it was the Viper Queen because both murders occurred on, or no, the murder of Maximus occurred on her soil, but she knew both Maximus and Danica. So they're like, well, that's a connection between both of them. However, the Viper Queen has a pretty solid alibi, so it's a no-go. Rune kind of figures out that, you know, as they're trying to figure out what the Viper Queen or whatever, Rune is still looking into the horn, and he's like, wait, this demon, have you guys seen him before? And Bryce looks at the demon, she's like, oh my god, that's the demon that killed Danica. What the heck? So this Crystallos demon now is kind of like culprit number 1, and now they're trying to figure out who is summoning this fucking demon. So now the two mysteries, where the horn is and Danica's murder, are kind of starting to converge, because without knowing about the horn, you can't know about Danica's murder, and vice versa. Without knowing about Danica's murder, you can't know about the horn, because the demon is the same in both. So they go to Luna's temple. Luna is like a goddess or something, and that's where the horn was. That's where it was stolen from, and they don't really find out anything. This chapter was like actually kind of stupid. Like, I don't think anything really happened. All they did was like stand in Rune's shadows and like talk or something. And Hunt eventually like goes outside. He like talks to one of the acolytes about the night that it was stolen. Doesn't really get a lot of information that I remember out of her. She was like very, very young. But essentially nothing comes of their search for the horn, or Danica's murder to this trip to Luna's temple. However, literally the next day, that acolyte, I'm pretty sure it was the same acolyte, I don't think it was specified, but I'm just going to assume, was murdered just in the way that Maximus and Danica were murdered. And Bryce and Hunt show up to the scene. Bryce didn't want to go to the scene because obviously Bestie has PTSD from literally watching her friends be murdered by this fucking demon, and Hunt is like, come on, we have to go identify the body and figure out if it's the demon. And Bryce is like, no, I have post-traumatic stress disorder because of this. I will have a literal panic attack if I go up to this crime scene. Also, it's a fucking crime scene. There's blood everywhere and dead bodies, and Hunt's like, come on, it's not that bad. So they show up, and of course Bryce is like freaking out because, again, it's a dead fucking body. Like, anyways, so Bryce kind of storms off. She's pissed. I would be too, because she told Hunt time and time again, I don't want you to go see this fucking body. And Hunt just drags her along anyways, says it's like her job. And through this kind of storm off, we learn that the person that Bryce found in the alleyway and helped was Micah, the Archangel, Hunt's owner. And that Micah doesn't want anyone to know this because he thinks that, in Micah's words, that he would be seen as weak for being saved by someone who hasn't even made the drop. I don't know that I explained the drop. I don't know. The drop is like something that Veneer make so that their human body dies and they like come into their power. Danica and Bryce had like a pact to do it together because you need an anchor so you don't actually die while you do it. But obviously Danica can't be Bryce's anchor because she's dead. Anyways, Micah was like, I don't want like a half human, half fae girl who hasn't even made the drop to be my savior. Like, that's kind of embarrassing. And so Bryce like realizes, she's like, holy shit, like that's crazy. And Hunt was like, he just bites himself in the own ass. He's like, I'm also sorry that I ever suspected you of being Danica's murderer. And Bryce is like, I'm sorry, you what? Like, you what? You think I did what? I killed my best friend. You think I killed my best friend? And Hunt's like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I realize now that like it was so hard for you to see the crime scene, so it's like obviously not you. And Bryce is like, it took you until this long to realize that it's not me? So she's pissed. She starts like running around, like literally running.
Why are you running?
And she goes to the White Raven, which is the club that she was at the night Danica died, and she meets up with Juniper, her friend, and they start talking, and Hunt's like, oh my god, she's gonna go get drunk, she's gonna go do all her drugs because she went to the club. Turns out Bryce, because Hunt shows up and like sits with them, turns out Bryce hasn't been drinking and doing any drugs since Danica's murder because she's traumatized. So it's like, of course. And at the club, it gets bombed by like human rebels, or they suspect human rebels. It gets bombed. Bryce, Juniper, and Hunt are all okay. They don't leave with any scratches. They're fine. But yeah, it just fucking explodes. Like, they're just literally dancing, and Hunt is like going to get a drink, and it just like just I was so shook. I was like, what the fuck? Anyways, yeah, that was just a short little detour, I guess. But because of this like explosion and presumed like attempt at an attack, Hunt now, instead of staying on the rooftop across from Bryce, now lives in Bryce's guest bedroom. So forced proximity just got a little bit more forced and a little bit more proximal, if you know what I'm saying. So we kind of hop back to Rune, who is still researching all this stuff about the horn. He finds out that Prince Pelias had a wife and a daughter. His wife's name was like Thea, and his daughter's name was Helena. They were also starborn, and the horn, this is when we learn that the horn worked when people who were starborn poured their light into it, and that is how it's like it got all of its power. And he finds out that the only way that the only way that the horn can be fixed is with light that is not light and magic that is not magic. And essentially him and Bryce are like, what the fuck does that mean? And I too was like, literally, what the fuck does that mean? During this time, Rune has like 2 little frat boy friends because he literally lives in like a frat house. He has Flynn and Declan. Flynn is like, I think he's just supposed to be like comedic relief or something. Declan is like fucking FBI level of hacking. Like, I don't know where the fuck he got all of it from, but apparently he can hack into literally anything you can think of. And so he was tasked by Rune to like track down Danica's whereabouts, and he supposedly found out that Danica was at Luna's temple the night that it was stolen, the night that the horn was stolen. So another step in our mystery has been unveiled, and to figure out the like light that is not light, magic that is not magic riddle or whatever about the horn, the 2 siblings, Bryce and Rune, are like, we have to go to the Oracle. And Hunt is like, what the fuck is the Oracle? And, you know, this is what Rune and Bryce both saw when they were 13. Because, again, this is like a coming of age thing for Faye, I guess. I don't know. And they were both like, well, Hunt, you have to do it. Because I'm not going in. Both of them had terrible, like, experiences with the Oracle. So they're like, I'm not going back. And, of course, like, Bryce's was really bad, because this is how we learn that the reasoning behind why the Autumn King just doesn't want anything to do with Bryce was because of her oracle reading when she was like 13. Essentially she walked in and the oracle like just started screaming and like clawing at her eyes and was blind for a week. The Autumn King was like, holy shit, like what the fuck do you do in your future? Like, you are not a daughter of mine. And he literally like kicks her out on the street. Like, she was dead ass on the street, and Rune helped her, but like the Autumn King just continues to like be bad. We need to cancel the Autumn King. Like, come on. In this world, there's got to be Twitter or something. So they send Hunt in, and essentially all Hunt gets is the Oracle says, stay away from Bryce Quinlan. Thanks. That helped a whole lot. Oracle. That helps so much. That was so good. But yeah, just like super vague for no reason. I don't know. Anyways, that's all they learn from the Oracle. Another factor in our little mystery is there is a human rebel. He's not a rebel. He's a fucking terrorist. Named Philip Briggs, who was released kind of around Danica's murder. And he is in jail right now for the murder of Danica and the Pack of Wolves, because they're like, you definitely did this, dude. Like, Danica like arrested you, so there's no way that you didn't do this. And Philip was like, no, I didn't. And so they go and visit him because they're like, well, I guess we should question the guy that's literally on trial for murdering Danica, you know, as we continue this. So they visit him. They visit Briggs in jail, and he says, again, he has nothing to do with the murders, and that he actually respected Danica because Danica gave him some warnings and was like, hey, literally stop what you're doing or else I have to arrest you. And he was like, I like you. So essentially they're like, okay, I guess Philip Briggs wouldn't kill Danica. After this, we learn that there is another murder at Luna's temple. And so they go and just kind of look at the footage. They realize that the murders are happening along ley lines, so like energy, like spouts of energy. And they find out that the footage from the night of the theft was doctored, and the only person who, the only person who has access to this footage is none other than Sabine, Danica's bitch of a mother. Dun dun dun, that's the end of part 2. We come into part 3 where Victoria, who is like a wraith, something. She's something. She's also part of Micah's like unit. They're called like a triari. I like the word unit better because it's easier to say. But so essentially, Bryce and Hunt in the second part were like, well, we need evidence before we go to Sabine. Obviously, like, you guys work in law, so yeah, you need evidence, duh. And so they task Victoria with kind of tracking down the demon using temperature, because since it was on a ley line and like energy, I don't know, just to try and track it and see where it went, based on the camera footage. I think she used the camera footage and like tracked it with its temperature or energy, and like found out that it was in the sewers. Like, it was literally being a little sewer rat and going around the city. And so Hunt has another friend who is like a merman, a merperson, a merson, and his name is Therian. He's like a part of the he's a part of the River Queen's like task force. He's like captain of intelligence or something, and he and Hunt know each other because like years ago his sister was brutally murdered and Hunt was assigned to the case to help him. And so Therian, like literally every other man in this fucking series and universe, like flirts with Bryce and like calls her legs or something. And I was like, okay, we get it. Bryce is hot. Like, okay, whatever. But they visit him and they're like, hey, can you look for any like shady dealings or stuff going around? Like, there's a literal demon sewer rat running around. So if you see anything, call us, let us know. And Therian's like, cool, whatever. The next day, they go visit, or is it the next? Whatever. They visit Sabine next, and this is where we kind of go to like the wolf's den, and this is where we meet Emil, and Ethan. Ethan is Connor's brother. If you remember, Connor was like the second in command to Danica, who like literally professed his love for Bryce, and then she like had sex with someone, and then he like fucking died. And Ethan is his little brother who is very close with Bryce. Like, they were like nearly best friends, like Danica and Bryce were. And Ethan found out about like Bryce having sex with the line shifter because it happened in public, and this is a modern world, so there's like tabloids. And Ethan essentially like was like, don't come to their funeral, and also fuck you. So in the past two years, like, Bryce has not had contact with any of the wolves. I'm just gonna call her Emil. Emil is like the new alpha of the pack, and she's a little shit. Like, they don't even have good like insults. They just call Bryce a whore, and it's like, do you have anything else? Like, pick up a dictionary, dude. Bring some adjectives to the table. If you're gonna be mean, like, be good at it. I don't know. But this is how we find out that in the past 2 years, like, the wolves, like Sabine, Ethan, and Emil, and all of the rest of their pack have literally been like bullying Bryce to the point where Bryce literally almost took her own life. We find out that one night on Bryce's like building roof, she was literally on the edge and needed to be talked off the ledge by Juniper. To not take her own life. And Hunt, this is kind of where we start to see Hunt like soften up to Bryce, where he's like, oh my god, like, you almost killed yourself? That's so sad. You're so sexy. Don't kill yourself, you're so sexy. Yeah, this is like where we start to see like a little bit more of the softness. They've become friends at this point. Like, they take pictures of each other and like do fun friend stuff. But this is, I feel like, the real turning point where Hunt really starts to become more in tune to Bryce's emotions and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just what I remember. So they go up to Sabine and they make it past all of the pack, and they're essentially like, we're here on cop business, you have to let us in. So they go see Sabine, and of course she's a bitch, and they're like, we know you doctored that film, those cameras, when the horn went bye-bye, when it was stolen. And Sabine's like, how dare you accuse me of that? Like, that could ruin me. And they're like, well, you did it. So they leave. And while they're just kind of walking around, like, Bryce is obviously like upset after going to go see them, because as she's like walking out and walking in, The wolves are just like, fuck you, you whore. Connor didn't deserve you. You suck. And Bryce is like obviously depressed because she's just been fucking verbally assaulted by a group of people that she used to love. But they're walking around getting some air, and then who shows up? The demon, the chrysalis demon. I know your answers were correct. The chrysalis demon comes and just attacks the shit out of both of them. And what we know of the chrysalis demon is that it has like venom in its like fangs or whatever. And when it bites someone, it like essentially, if it's someone who's veneer, it like cancels out their power. I don't know how to describe it, but it, like they like lose all powers, so they just become like a regular person basically. And Hunt, of course, gets bitten. I forgot to mention Hunt has like lightning or something, and he can't use it. So this demon is attacking Bryce, who again hasn't made the drop. She's basically human at this point. Hunt, also basically human, because he just got bit. On their own, they would not be able to kill the demon, but together somehow they were able to do it. And they just like leave. They go home. They like kill the demon. They're like, we gotta go home. This ain't it. We gotta go home. And they go home and they kiss for the first time. I guess like killing a demon is like really hot and sexy in this world, because they killed that demon. They said, let's smooch. But they are caught mid-kiss by Sabine, who was like with a gun, a literal gun. She pops in with a gun, and she's like, screw you guys for basically saying that I doctored the footage for my daughter. And they were like, well, of course you did, because you killed Danica. And Sabine is like, what the fuck? No, I didn't. Actually, Danica was the one that stole the horn. And Bryce is like, dude, what? And so we find out that Sabine did doctor the footage. She did, but not because she killed Danica, but because she wanted to save face, because Danica stole the horn. And Bryce is like, what the fuck? Like, do I know anything about this girl? As we learn in both books, no, she did not. She knew fucking nothing about her best friend. Yeah, so literally Bryce is like in shock. She doesn't know what to do with herself. Like, Rune comes to kind of the rescue. Like, Bryce is just in this shell shock, like, dude, I did not know my best friend at all. Rune comes to kind of the rescue and tells them about this like new drug that's hit the market called Synth. And it's a synthetic healing drug that's supposed to like improve healing for I think it was humans. Like, it was supposed to kind of essentially give humans the ability to heal themselves the same way that veneer do, because, you know, if like a human, you and I, get, you know, bitten by a demon, we're dead. But veneer, they kind of like can heal up a little bit better, a little bit faster. So it kind of gives humans that same level playing field. And we kind of jump over to Therian, who discovers 8 bodies. 8 dead people that he thinks were killed by that demon, the Crystallos. So Bryce and Hunt are now kind of starting to kind of think about like, hey, was Danica actually killed by the demon? Because the wounds are different than the wounds from the other, you know, 8 people who were actually identified as being killed by the demon. And there wasn't any venom in her wounds. So they're kind of starting to be like, something's not adding up. Drugs? ? So Bryce kind of tricks Hunt into literally summoning like the Prince of Chasm, which is like a ring of hell. His name's like Adidas. I'm gonna call him Idis. And she's like, I'm gonna summon my friends. And Hunt is like, what the fuck are you doing? And here comes literally the prince of the 5th level of hell. And Bryce is like, hey, bestie. And he's like, hey, how are you? Like, what's up? And Hunt is over here like, there's a literal Prince of Demon, like, hell in our fucking living room, Bryce. What the fuck? And Bryce is like, oh, no, he's, like, my best friend. Like, it's okay. Itis, like, shows up as a cat, which is actually, like, kind of cute, but whatever. Yeah, he's, like, literally, like, a Cheshire cat. He just shows up. And we find out that he was, like, the Prince of Chasm, comforted Bryce after she was kicked out by her dad. So that's kind of how they know each other, and, like, why Bryce isn't as scared of him. Hunt, on the other hand, is like, Bryce, literally, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? And Itis tells Hunt and Bryce that the Asteri have kind of told lies about hell and made it seem so much worse than what it actually is. And he tells them that the demons, like the deep demons, don't even give a shit about the upper world. They don't care about Midgard, which is the world that we're on. But before he goes, he tells Bryce, he's like, dude, you literally need to make the drop. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And Bryce is like, sorry, bestie, I'm getting with this hot angel. I don't have time to make the drop. It just kind of skips from there. It's just like, okay, you know. And we get back to the shop, the antique shop with Jezebel, and we find out that Jezebel, like, bought this, like, aquatic thing. I don't even know what it is. It's called a knock. It's got one of those O's with, like, a slash through it. Knock. She gets this knock, which essentially, like, to Lahaba is like, dude, now there's, like, a fucking big old tank of water in our thing. I'm literally made of fire. Like, this kind of sucks. And so they kind of just assume that it's, like, Jezebel's way of reminding Bryce and Lahaba that they're there to do a job and not to fuck around and become the fucking mystery gang or whatever. Victoria's been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and she, like, tests Danica's clothes from the night she was murdered and finds out that they were covered in this, like, synthetic healing drug, synth, and that the people that did Danica's autopsy just kind of left it out. They redacted a lot of the information, but they find out that synth has obsidian salt, which is used to summon demons, and I think specifically, like, deep demons. I think it's like you need it to, like, summon a certain level of demon. Again, Sabine is pissed, and Micah calls Bryce and Hunt in for a meeting because Sabine is, again, pissed that they would accuse her of, sorry, I had to burp, that they would accuse her of killing her own daughter. So Sabine is like, kill Hunt, kill him, just kill him. And Micah's like, whoa, like, calm down here, bestie, calm down. Well, let's just take off his wings. So they literally cut Hunt's wings off, and of course Bryce is, like, screaming and crying, pissing and shitting and throwing up as Hunt is, like, getting his wings cut off. Although we find out that they grow back. It just is, like, itchy or whatever when they grow back. And yeah, that was kind of, like, proper punishment for accusing such a high up person of such a gruesome murder. So at this meeting, we find out that Bryce sold her soul to the Underking to make sure that Danica went to the bone quarter, which is, like, I don't know, like, when people die, like, they kind of do, like, a Viking funeral, except they don't set your body on fire. It's just either, like, you make it to the bone quarter, which is, like, the other side, like a meadows, you know, afterlife or whatever, or your boat, like, falls over and you fall into the pits of the ocean. And so Bryce, like, essentially sold her place at the bone quarter to make sure that Danica went. Because Sabine is like, you killed Danica, and Bryce is like, I literally gave my place in heaven for that bitch. No, I did not. So, yeah, because she was afraid that Danica, because she was pleading for her life, wouldn't make it because she was, like, a coward or whatever. It was so stupid. It's not stupid, but, like, Sabine basically being like, she didn't deserve to go to the bone quarter, blah, blah, blah. Like, Sabine is such a bad mom. She fucking sucks. Later on, they kind of figure out that, Jesus Christ. So now Hunt is, like, kind of resting because his wings literally just got fucking removed from his body. And Bryce is, I think she's like at the antiques shop when this happens. And the Prince of Pit told, was it the Prince of Pit? No, it was the Viper Queen. I think it was the Viper Queen. I don't know. The Viper Queen, I think, told Bryce to look where it hurts the most. And Bryce is like, what is with all of these fucking riddles? And so she's trying to figure out like what they mean. And Bryce has been trying really hard to get into Danica's computer, because she's like, there's got to be something in here about, the synth and the horn, because obviously Danica's been doing a lot of shady shit, and she has to have something somewhere. And Bryce finally gets into the computer and finds hidden within a folder named Bryce. So we're kind of led to believe that Danica knew that she was going to die and kind of left clues. And Bryce finds out that through this folder, there is a flash drive in the jacket that Bryce has been wearing for literally the past 2 years. So Danica had this like jean jacket. Bryce has been wearing this jean jacket since Danica died, and supposedly, like, it said on the back, they had like this saying that they really liked was like, through love all is possible. And somehow, some way, in wearing this jacket for like 2 years, Bryce didn't feel the fucking flash drive inside the L. How do you not feel that? And so she like opens up the jacket, finds this flash drive, and finds on this drive a bunch of like stolen footage of synth experiments. And on these synth experiments, it's from Render Industries, so the same people who did Danica's autopsy. It was that a bunch of humans were injected with the synth, and essentially they become like superhuman, like super veneer level powerful, and just like rip into veneer, like rip them into shreds, the same way that Danica, the Pack of Devils, everyone else was found literally shredded chicken on the floor. And Bryce and Hunt watch these together, and they kind of find out that, or kind of figure that this is probably how Danica and the Pack of Devils went, was with the use of synth. And because essentially, like, if this is what this does to humans, like, what does it do to veneer? So if Danica took it, or someone took it, they're done. And after this is when we get our first like spicy scene. I think technically like the only spicy scene in House of Earth and Blood. And I'm not someone who reads books for the spice, for the smut, but it was like kind of uncomfortable to a point where it's like, yeah, we just watched these like people get absolutely shredded, and Hunt is like bleeding on Bryce's like white couch, but Bryce is like having the time of her life. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it was such a weird scene. Anyways, so Bryce and Hunt go to bed. They go to bed together, I think, or no, they sleep in separate beds, because after that whole like, I guess like overstepping of boundaries, because they're technically like partners on this case, they both sleep in their respective beds. Bryce is like, well, there has to be more clues. There has to be more. So she's like, I'm gonna go to the old apartment, and there has to be something there. So she kind of sneaks out, and it starts walking. Come to find out that her apartment is like up in flames, like literally like someone set it on fire. But then she gets a call from Therian, who says that there's a shady dealing happening on the docks, and she has to get there right now. So they get there. They're kind of like hiding underneath the dock, and like they can't see her. And all we see are like 3 cloaked figures and the Viper Queen, like selling synth. And who is it in the cloaked figures? Incorrect. It's fucking Hunt. And this was something that kind of threw me for a loop when I read it. I was like, what? Like, I was actually kind of pissed when I read this part, because I was like, absolutely nothing about how this entire book has been going has led me to believe that Hunt would buy this like devastatingly horrifying drug. Like, it just came out of nowhere, and it was so weird, and it felt so out of character for him. But I guess you could argue like, well, we don't really know a whole bunch about Hunt. We know some parts of his backstory, but I don't know. Essentially, him, Victoria, and Justinian, the unit that works for Isaiah, works for Micah, whatever, wanted to get the synth so that they could, like, literally kill the Asteri and Micah and, like, free themselves from their debts and stuff. And Bryce literally, like, hops on board. She's like, dude, what the hell? Like, I thought you were asleep. And Hunt is like, I thought you were asleep. What are you doing here? It's not what it looks like, Bryce. Don't close your eyes. Turn around. It's nothing. Go back to bed. And Bryce is, like, livid, obviously, because the person that she literally just, like, basically had sex with and has been developing feelings for just betrayed her. And come to find out, Micah is there, of course. And Micah's like, I've known that this has been going on for so long. You guys are doomed. Time to go to jail. And like, he essentially knows that they were getting ready to start another uprising. They, like, their plan was to distribute it to the human rebels, but I think also, like, I'm pretty sure they were planning to take it as well. But essentially Micah found out because they tried to, like, recruit someone that was, like, a snitch and told Micah. So recruited the wrong person. Hunt, like, apologizes to Bryce. Like, Bryce is, like, literally breaking down on this dock. Again, pissing, shitting, crying, and throwing up. And Hunt is like, I'm so sorry, Bryce, I'm so sorry. And says that, like, Danica stole the formula and stock 2 years ago and sold it. And that she and Tertian, I don't remember who Tertian is. Oh, Maximus, the vampire, were addicts, and that she likely killed her pack, and then killed herself because in the, like, videos, the person that took synth would, like, rip these people to shreds, and then eventually, like, if there was no one left, they would rip themselves to shreds. And so, like, he essentially says, like, there's the synth, the obsidian in the synth is the reason why the Crystallos was summoned, but it had nothing to do with the horn, which you're kind of like, then why'd she steal it? I'm confused. Anyways, like, he's, like, bawling his fucking, he's like, I'm so sorry, I changed my mind after we saw the test footage and I realized it was a bad idea. And it's like, it took you this long to realize that was a bad idea, Hunt, huh? It took you that long? It was so stupid. But they, like, essentially get arrested. And Hunt was, like, claiming that he tried to stop it, but Justinian and Victoria were like, no, we have to. And Hunt is like, no, we don't, but I'll still show up anyways. Dude, come on. Situation just goes from 0 to 100 because, again, Hunt, Justinian, and Victoria are locked up for basically assisting human rebels in starting an uprising again. And Justinian is, like, publicly crucified, like, quite literally crucified. He was on a cross. And Victoria, she's, like, a wraith or whatever, which means that she, like, has, like, a human body, but she's not human, or veneer body or whatever. So they, like, extract her soul and just, like, threw her in the ocean in a box for all eternity. And so that's, like, her punishment, which is basically isolation and to never be found. While Hunt is kind of, like, in, like, the in-between. Like, he doesn't know what's gonna happen to him because he's just, like, in this, like, locked white padded cell, and he's just, like, watching Justinian's body rot. Like, it's just gross. This is where the third part ends, and we are going into the last and final fourth part of House of Earth and Blood. Days pass, and essentially during this time there is, like, a summit that happens in Lunithion where all of these, like, figureheads for all the different, like, houses and stuff get together, and essentially it's a summit. They, like, talk to the Asteri or something and, like, figure out government and politics and shit. And who other would show up than Sandriel, who is, like, the like, sadistic sister of Shahar, if you remember, is, like, the old lover of Hunt who was murdered because of the uprising that she and Hunt tried to complete, like, 200 years ago. And Sandriel arrives to Hunt's cell, and Hunt is like, dude, what the fuck do you want? She goes, what do you think I'm here for? I'm your punishment, baby. I'm your new owner. And Hunt is like, this is quite literally, yes, the worst thing that has ever happened to me. Her first act of torture is to bring up like a slideshow of all the pictures that he and Bryce have been taking, where it's like, again, they like take pictures of each other as like a fun, like friend, romantic interest type deal. And she just puts it on repeat and she's like, bye. Have fun watching the person that you literally fucked over, like, fall in love with you through these pictures. You fucking suck. So, that's actually, like, pretty good torture, I guess. So, I totally forgot an entire part of this book. So, in the third chapter, Bryce, not third chapter, the third part, Bryce, like, goes to a med witch. Why do they have to be med witches? I don't know. They can't just be, like, nurses and doctors. Goes to a med witch to get like the bite in her thigh fixed because it hurts still. And after learning about the Chrysalis demon's venom, the med witch is like, oh, it's probably because there's venom still in there. So she like extracts it. This is when Hunt and Bryce like actually kiss for the first time, because the first time, the actual like quote unquote first time, Sabine interrupted them. Now they like kissed, and that's when like things really started to level up. I completely forgot about that part. But the person that fixes her leg comes back a little bit later. That's how I remembered. Anyways, so the med witch drops off a vial of synth antidote, because in her like extracting the poison, the venom, she used it to create the antidote, like most venoms are created, or most antidotes are created. Bryce kind of stores it in Jezebel's safe so that she just knows where it's just like an inkling. She's like, I'm gonna put this here because this is like where it's gonna be safest, because Jezebel has so many wards among her antique shop, so she's like, this is probably where it's gonna be the safest. And she decides that no matter what Hunt did, she just can't leave him to his fate. She loves him, even though he like is an idiot, like a literal idiot. So she like runs to the square. She pulls like a Bella in the middle of New Moon and like is running through the square to come get him from basically the Volturi. And she's like, no, wait, I'm going to buy you. Okay. Sandriel's like, with what money, bitch? And like, Bryce is like, with Jezebel's. So, it doesn't work. Like, basically Hunt, to save Bryce, has to do like the like, I'm gonna be a dick card, and basically says like, don't contact me or whatever, like don't call. Not like that, but like leave me alone, because he doesn't want her to like get into these dealings, because Bryce, once Sandriel's like, I don't need money, bitch, okay, she's like, well, take me instead, like I will be your slave. And that's when Hunt is like, nope, never mind, nope, fuck. He pulls the like mean card and he's like, don't contact me again, or like don't try and come for me again, I don't want you, or whatever, like just so he can like back Bryce off. As Bryce is trying to sell herself, Sandriel's like, you think I'm stupid? I know you're the Autumn King's daughter. I'm not buying that shit, because I don't want to get fucked over, okay? No. Like, Bryce is like trying literally everything. She tries to like give her this like $3 million amulet, and Sandriel's like, whatever, and just like literally melts it on the floor. And I'm pretty sure Rune is here, and he's like, no, Bryce, like technically, since she's not married, like is still owned by me and my father, because she's the Autumn princess, as you stated, Sandriel, and you so gracefully like revealed to the entire public. Rune has to literally like take her away kicking and screaming. And like quite literally, like the minute that she leaves and like storms off from Rune, she gets attacked by the Chrysalis on her own. Rune, Declan, and Flynn are the ones to save her, and they immediately take her home. And this is where we kind of enter like kind of the final act of the book. And we're at the summit, and this is where like Rune, the Autumn King, Sandriel, Micah, Isaiah, like all the important people, I guess. Sabine is there. The Prime is there. Sabine's father, Danica's grandfather. And Hypoxia, who is like this witch queen. She's like very young, and the Autumn King wants Rune to like marry her. This is when Rune realizes that the Medwitch is Hypoxia, that was doing like the venom experiments, and that he kind of had a crush on. I kind of forgot about that. There's so much stuff in this book. I'm sorry. But yeah, like Rune finds out that the Medwitch he had a crush on was Hypoxia, the person that he is about to be engaged to legally or something. I don't know. But yeah, the summit starts outside of the city. Like I think they're like 30 minutes away from the city, and Sandriel like literally has Hunt by a leash, not like a physical one, but he has to like be by her side all the time. And all the city heads are there. Fury's there, Jezba's there, representing the Underking. But this is where we find out that Rune can talk to people in his mind. It just shows up. Like I was like, oh damn, okay. Pulling a Rhysand, huh? A Rhysand. Fuck. We're pulling a Rhysand, huh? And so he's like telepathically talking to Hunt and whatever. So he's trying to like basically tell him he's stupid, essentially, through his brain. So at the summit, Micah excuses himself and was like, I have to go meet. I have a meeting. And everyone's like, oh, he's got to go meet with the Asteri. Like, that's the only way that he would get out of the summit. So everyone just assumes that he's going to meet with the Asteri. Like, no one double checks. They're like, okay, bye, Micah. Have fun. Don't die or whatever. Because the Asteri are like scary beings. They're like gods or whatever. And yeah, no one thinks about it. But if you remember, Jezba runs like this huge antique store that is full of illegal stuff. So of course there's like a shit ton of cameras in there. And that's where Bryce is because she's working at the moment. She's kind of like, again, depressed because Hunt basically told her to fuck off. And now everyone knows that she's the Autumn Princess, the Fae Princess, and that she tried to sell herself and was kind of embarrassed. So like she's a little sad. And there's cameras everywhere. Jezba's not really watching them, and Bryce knows that she's not because she's at the summit. But there's a knock at the door, and Bryce is like, what the heck? I like moved all of the appointments away because I don't want to see anyone. And she opens the door, and who is it? Micah. Bryce and literally every reader at this point is like, what are you doing here? And Micah starts he enters his villain arc, his like Joker era, and he like somehow bypassed the entire security system. Like Jezba doesn't even know that he's there until Bryce literally is like, you're supposed to be at the summit, dude. And he's like, you're right, I am. And she's like, you're freaking me out because you're not supposed to be here. So she sends Jezba like a help me or like a little warning text. And Jezba's like, okay. So she checks the cameras and sees that Micah's there. And Jezba's like, hold up, hold the whole summit. I have something to say and to show you. So they put her like phones, they like mirror her phone screen on the big projector or whatever. And they basically watch in real time as Micah like actively lied to everyone as like being weird to Bryce. And everyone's like, what the heck? What the heck is going on this? What the heck is going on this very day? And so everyone at the summit is just like, this is not good. But the other thing too is that they are literally like 30 minutes away. So if anything happens, they're basically fucked. Like Bryce, like no one can get to Bryce in time. So they're all kind of just sitting ducks, just watching this in horror. Like especially Rune and Hunt are just like, holy shit, like what the fuck? And essentially, because Micah is in his like Joker era, apparently, he just kind of starts to just spill his guts because, surprise, surprise, he is the villain. We find out from Micah that he has known that Jezba's archive, her like illegal archive, has had all of these illegal books for a really long time. And in fact, he knows that it is the Library of Pathos, which is like a mythical library that essentially was not supposed to exist. It has books that predated the Asteri and the Veneer that were on Midgard, and he's like, those books are not supposed to be here. How would it fare you for knowing that your boss is like a crime lord, essentially, and you do her biddings? You do illegal shit, Bryce, and I know you do. And Bryce is like, what are you talking about? Again, why are you here? And Micah's like, that's what I was getting to. Basically, like, Bryce is like, just get to the point. Why the fuck are you here? And Micah, like, is like stepping closer to her. And he's like, Bryce, these books were supposed to be burned 15,000 years ago because they came from the Rift in the First War. And Bryce is like, okay. And Micah, again, getting closer and closer. I like to think of it as like, that scene in The Shining.
Stay away from me. Please.
And essentially, Micah realized that he essentially realized that Bryce was working for such a illegal library, and that like she had access to so many things, when Bryce offered up this like $3 million amulet that she had, because those were the things that the original priestesses had, and like they were smuggled. And he was like, how do you have that, Bryce? And she's like, I don't know, Micah, what do you want? And this is when Micah tells Bryce that she is the horn. She is the horn. And Bryce is like, what are you talking about? I don't have horns.
Oh, you stink!
I have pointed ears, but I don't have horns. And he's like, no, you are the horn. He's like, that tattoo in your back? Danica brought the horn, made it into a powder, and put it in the ink. The horn is your tattoo. And Bryce is like, when did she have time to do that? Did the tattoo artist know? Is that sanitary? And he essentially says that the shape of the horn does not change its power. And Micah hopes that by injecting Bryce with synth, he will heal the horn with like light that is not light, magic that is not magic, or whatever, and blast his own magic and give it the power it needs to activate. Essentially using Bryce as like a conduit of the horn. And then he like attacks her. As he's like holding her down, like gets a confession out of him, because Bryce knows that Jezebel has turned on the cameras. Bryce is a smart cookie. And she's like, if I'm going to die here, you're going to confess, buddy, and you are going to be dead too, and I'm going to beat your ass in the bone quarter. I don't think they go to the bone quarter. I just made that up. She's going to beat his ass in the afterlife or whatever, in hell. He's going to beat her ass in hell. And so Micah confesses because he assumes that Bryce will be dead and will not have the ability to pass this on, because he also is so stupid and doesn't realize that there's cameras. He says that Micah tells Bryce that he was a longtime investor in Red Nerd Industries, which is the place that did the synth experiments, and also did the autopsy on Danica. I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. Did the synth experiments and did the autopsy on Danica's body. It was Danica's job to collect people for the experiments, and found that her job was to like basically recruit people for the company. And this included like she like recruited the scientists that developed synth. And like after she recruited these scientists, she kind of kept an eye on the experiments, which is how she got like all of the footage and stuff. That she thought that synth would be a good way for humans and half humans to hold their own against Veneer, because again, Veneer have like excessive amount of powers against humans. And so he reports that, or tells Bryce that Danica became way too concerned with humans, and when she stole the experiment footage, Micah released a batch of synth into the streets, knowing that Danica would be worried about, all of the synth, and would try and go around and grab it before it went went out and was distributed too far. She did end up like kind of rounding it up, but Micah caught her with it. And so he demanded Danica that she steal the horn for him and return it to him so that he doesn't arrest her. Danica at this time didn't know that Micah was an investor, so she didn't know that he knew all about synth and was like basically running the experiments, I think. So in her mind, she's like, oh, fuck, I don't want to get, arrested for selling drugs. I'm a figurehead. So she does it. She steals the horn. But obviously Danica knew that something was up, and she tattooed it into Bryce. Somehow, some way, she knew that she was donezo. She was gonna die. So she set her stuff straight. She got her will ready, and tattooed the horn into Bryce. Micah plans to use Bryce as the horn to summon, a bunch of demons from hell and open the rift, so that he can have like a army of Hellions, essentially, to just decimate the rebels, basically decimate all the humans. He kind of assumes that with the horn, he can become one of the Asteri, level, like he can move up politically. So after basically admitting that he wants to be Asteri and wanted to use the horn to like decimate human rebels, Danica was like, no, man, no. And so that's kind of where Danica's like feelings of, I think I'm gonna die because he just told me this like big secret, and there's no way he's gonna let me live with that. So Micah kills her. Unfortunately, Danica does rip the pack of devils apart and herself, but it wasn't because Danica took the drug on her own volition. It was because she was non-consensually given the drug by Micah. And Micah knew that it was a good time to do it because Briggs had just been released and he would be a good scapegoat. And so in the time of Danica's murder and putting Bryce and Hunt on the case, he spent a lot of time like researching the Crystallos demon, trying to find the horn. And essentially he was the one who was summoning the Crystallos demon to find the horn, because obviously, as Rune stated, the horn and the demon were like counteracting each other. So the demon was created to find the horn and destroy it. He also, like, to cover his tracks, to make sure like more people were looking for it, he like sows seeds of doubt into the Autumn King, which was why the Autumn King randomly was like, Rune, you need to go find the horn. And Rune's like, fucking why? It was because Micah had kind of sown seeds of doubt in the Autumn King and was like, you guys need this, like, the Fae are not as strong as they once were without the horn. And the Autumn King's like, I like your thinking, Micah. Okay. We find out, essentially, that Micah also did the same thing to Tertian, to Maximus, that creepy vampire. He injected it with a synth, and he did it to exclusively involve Bryce. So that's kind of why there wasn't a murder for 2 years up until Bryce like did a dealing, because obviously all the dealings that Bryce didn't end in someone becoming like literal shreds up until there. So that's kind of why that kind of just covers the base of like, well, why are they just now starting back up? We find out that he was the one that blew up the White Raven. He was also hoping that it would stir more resentment between Human and Veneer, so that he would have more of a reason to get rid of the rebels, so that he could be like, well, look how great I am. Like, the humans hated the Veneer, and I finished the war. Make me God, something like that or whatever. At this time, Micah, reveals that he first suspected that Bryce was the horn, for lack of a better term, when the Crystallos demon attacked her and Hunt for the first time. He knew specifically that she was the horn when the Crystallos demon went right for her after she took off that amulet. Because the amulet was like a saving grace. That was why she made it out alive the first attack. The first 2 attacks, essentially, I guess, because it was kind of like a protection ward or a protection for Bryce. And the minute she took it off, like, the demon came back. So, and then Micah injects Bryce with synth. By injecting her with synth, it gives her those Veneer powers that humans want, because Bryce hasn't made the drop, so she is still technically in her human body. And so it kind of gives her the power that she needs to heal herself and get ready for this fight that she's about to have with Micah. And so she gets free from him, and Micah, little piece of shit, throws Shrinks, the cat, into the Nox, like, water tank. Essentially, like, drowning Shrinks and giving Nox a reason to attack Shrinks and eat him, just to, like, rile her up, just to, like, make her pissed. And so she gets him out, resuscitates Shrinks, and, like, I think, like, punches the Nox or whatever, to get out. And this is when Lahaba, bless her little soul, Lahaba is also, like, helping Bryce keep Micah at bay, because at this time they've, like, locked him away in the bathroom. I think, like, he's locked, and Lahaba is, like, using all of her magic that she can to, like, keep him away. But it gets to the point where, like, Lahaba's like, I can't anymore, like, I'm sorry. And Bryce is like, well, you're free, like, I bought you, like, you're free, like, let's go. And Lahaba's like, I can't, because if we all go together, he will get you, and you have synth in you, like, this is not, like, this won't work. And you kind of know what's gonna happen. Like, Bryce is like, no, and Lahaba's like, I'm sorry, I love you. And I was, like, bawling my fucking eyes out. And essentially they break the glass of the knock, because the minute that the knock hits oxygen or whatever, it dies. So they smash the glass so that, essentially, to hinder Micah and make him slower so that Bryce can get to a safer spot in the antiques store. Lahaba does break the glass. It, you know, she's fire, so it takes her out. And Lahaba dies. The knock dies, and Micah is kind of set back a little bit so that Bryce and Shrinks can get to a safer spot. Bryce runs to Jezebel's office, because if you remember, that's where she locked away the antidote for synth. Again, at the summit, everyone is watching this happen. Bryce reaches her office, downs the antidote, and essentially, just so it doesn't drive her to destruction, so she doesn't kill herself after she kills Micah, and assembles this gun called the Godslayer that Jezebel has. And the reason that Bryce knows how to do that is because her stepfather, Randall, is, like, a sharpshooter. So he, like, taught her how to use guns or whatever. Great skill to know as a kid. And she just shoots him in the head right when he reaches the stairs. He opens the door and Bryce just, you know, pops him in the head. And then she, like, to really make sure he's dead, chops him into pieces and just burns his body. Lights it up. He's fucking ash now. And my favorite part about this whole thing is Bryce just grabs a vacuum and just sweeps his ass up. Micah is just in a vacuum now. In hell. So, yeah. But that is not even remotely the end of this story. So, essentially, Bryce is like, well, I just killed an archangel. I'm about to be arrested. The Asteri are not going to like this. Like, it's most likely going to be seen as, like, a political stunt, because Bryce is, like, half human. She's like, also, I just murdered someone and vacuumed them up and, you know, as if they were just, like, dust on a shelf. So she's like, well, I gotta go. I'm gonna leave. I don't want to be arrested right now, so I'm gonna bounce. Comes to find out that the horn and all of that opened up a portal to hell, and now there's such a shit ton of demons flying through the air, killing people, and everyone's just running through. It's just chaos. It's mass chaos. And Bryce has her gun, the Godslayer, and she also has a sword that Danica left her. So she's strapped. She's fucking strapped. And walking through the streets, killing demons, telling people to get inside. Like, she's basically out here being, like, the Terminator of Lunithion, and she's fucking killing it. Like, literally, she's killing them. Just blasting their fucking heads off. And like, daylight is starting to really, really recede, so we're kind of entering a more dangerous time. and a lot of places have like time limits on how long they'll let people in, because as the sun sets, more demons are going to come out, more dangerous. At the summit, everyone is like in like awe of what just happened, like watched in horror. Micah's dead. Bryce just vacuumed his ass up, and everyone's like, what the fuck do we do now? And Hypoxia, she has, you know, her little witch powers, and she like kind of looks at Hunt and looks at Rune, and Rune looks at Hunt, and they're all like kind of plotting a little bit. And I think it was like Rune or someone's like, dude, we have to go help them, like that's our city. And Sandriel is like, no. I'm gonna tell the Astarian, they're just gonna like figure it out. Their way of figuring it out is like sending bombs. What? So everyone's like, that's not good. So Hypoxia, like really quickly with her like witch magic, removes the slave mark off of Hunt, effectively releasing him from Sandriel's talons, for lack of a better term. And Hunt just goes ballistic and just obliterates her ass and just fucking kills her. At this time, like, Sabine is telling people, or telling her wolves to actively not go help Bryce. Okay. And Ethan, if you remember, Connor's like mean brother to Bryce, is like, whatever, fuck you, Sabine, I'm gonna go fight amongst Bryce. And so does Emil, the alpha. And I think like at this time we have Bryce, Ethan, and a lot of the wolves all helping on kind of like the battlefield, because they're all running towards where all the children are to help protect them and get them inside. Hunt, Fury, and I think Therian were all the ones that were in the helicopter on their way. Like, it takes 30 minutes, so they're on their way to help Bryce. But in the time of them getting there, Bryce, Ethan, and all the rest of the wolves are like shoveling humans into this like building so that they can all be safe. And it's kind of like literally like a timed door basically, and everyone is gunning for this door because it's literally starting to close. Everyone but Bryce gets into the door on time. So Bryce is just out there, and she's like, well, I know what I gotta do. Like, she's fully ready to like die for this, obviously, because she's like out there fighting. And she's also like, well, I'm about to get arrested anyways, or probably killed by the Asteri, so might as well die fighting for people, which is like very noble. Good job, Bryce. And so Hunt and Fury and Therian again are all like racing towards Bryce, while Bryce is running around to all of the gates. So in Lunithion, there are gates where people do the drop. It's where people donate their first light, which is something that Veneer give off during their drop. It like powers the city or something. And essentially, Bryce knows that if she can like power these gates with like first light or a certain type of light, in a little bit I'll get to, she could close the portal to hell because she has the horn on her back. But again, the horn only works when Starborn Fae pour their light into it. Well, here we go, besties. Bryce is Starborn. Jesus Christ. Bryce is Starborn, and she is like the Aang Avatar, The Last Airbender, light level Starborn. Like, she shows up and she is a fucking star. She is the star. So she runs to the city gate and she just starts to glow. And she is essentially, there's like a communication system among them. And she uses her ability as Starborn to communicate to the world, the city. She's like, I am Starborn Fae, Bryce Quinlan, daughter of the Autumn King. Get inside. I will fight the demons. Essentially, I don't remember what she says. It's a modern world. There are cameras everywhere. Everyone at the summit is watching, and they're all like, what the fuck? Like, Rune didn't know this. None of, obviously, Bryce's friends knew, but we find out that Danica knew because there was one night where they like fought a bunch of people, and Bryce like blinded them with her Starborn power, and we know that Danica, Ember, and Randall, so Bryce's parents and Danica, knew about this. So again, since she basically is the Horn and a starborn fae, she's the starborn princess, she's the chosen one alongside Rune, she is able to use her starborn powers and the gates to close the portal to hell. And she also uses her power to like blind the demons and stuff, but it takes a lot out of her because she's literally like shining a bunch of light out of all of her orifices. So she gets tired pretty quickly. Everyone at the summit learns about this, and now that everyone knows, Bryce kind of is a threat to the Asteri because she is the Horn and is starborn. So she's got a target on her back now. But yeah, she, with her light, orders the gates to close, but she can't do all of them. And again, Sandriel, before she died, told the Asteri about this, and the Asteri were like, well, we're going to send bombs. So Bryce is running around as the Asteri are getting ready to drop bombs. So just before the bomb hits, because it's literally like Bryce is running for shelter because she sees the Asteri like dropping a missile with their fucking plane or whatever, and Hunt is jumping from the helicopter right as Bryce finds shelter and like shelters herself. Hunt kind of protects her, and the bomb hits. Now this bomb is a like brimstone bomb, so it kind of similar to like the Crystallos bite. It kind of hinders healing and stuff, so it actually like kills the demons. So Bryce and Hunt don't die, but Hunt is like dying. He's actively dying. He was hit by a bomb, and the city is destroyed because the Asteri are like stupid and don't know how to like. And so Bryce is like, well, I have to do something. Like, I love Hunt. You know, I'm running out of energy. I need to make the drop. So she drags herself back over to the gate that she was just at, and she attempts to do the drop without an anchor. But she does technically kind of have an anchor because Danica's soul shows up and is like basically helping her through the drop. She needs that first light and her veneer abilities to finish this war, this battle or whatever between the demons and Bryce. It's literally just demons versus Bryce at this point. She hears Danica's voice coming from the bone quarter, saying that she'll anchor her. Bryce drops, and those in the conference center are like, again, watching, just waiting for Bryce to die. Like, they're like, the minute that Bryce dies, we are fucked. Like, the Horn, I think, essentially dies with her. She's like more starborn than Rune, so it's like, then what do we do? And so they're all just kind of like watching with bated breath. Hunt is dying. You know, it's just like it's a fucking mess. It's chaos. It's a mess. And Bryce manages to do the drop. She and Danica like talk about it, and Bryce is like, I can't do this without you. And Danica's like, but you found someone who, you know, makes you want to live again, Hunt. And Bryce is like, I know, but like, I miss you. And Danica's like, I love you, but you gotta do it. And so she like tells her to like light it up, and that's what Bryce does. She comes back from the drop and just like lights it the fuck up. She's like, as you're holding onto it, you give first light, and Bryce is given a lot of first light. She's got a lot of power, like more than the Autumn King, which is, you know, politically puts an even bigger target on her back. But she is like connecting all these gates with her first light and essentially actively closing the rift to hell. But again, since she doesn't have a physical anchor, it's harder for her to come back to life, and you have a time limit. I think it's like 10 minutes or something. And Bryce is really coming up quick on that time limit. She just barely, like by seconds, makes it back in time to not like die. And she comes to, and Hunt is doing compressions on her to bring her back to life because her first light healed Hunt. So he's kind of like back to normal-esque. And yeah, she closes up the rift to hell. Hunt is, you know, spared. He's healed. Bryce is now full veneer. And before she fully ascends, she talks to Danica a little bit more. And yeah, it's kind of like a good closure from Danica at the end of this book, I felt like. And yeah, it was a very like heartwarming thing to read. It it was a good like ending to that grief, I felt like, which I'll get into in a little bit. But the book ends with Hunt and Bryce, going home, and Regulus, one of the Asteri calls Bryce and is like, thank you for helping the city. You really like literally saved the day. But we know what you did, bitch. We know you killed Micah. We know what you fucking did. So we'll help you. We'll remove Hunt's slave tattoo. We'll let you live in peace. As long as you don't cause any more shit. You don't kill anyone else. Okay? And Bryce is like, okay. And, yeah. Essentially, the book ends with the Asteri threatening Bryce that if she gets involved in anything, she's dead. End book 1. So now I'm going to go very quickly get into things that I liked and I didn't like about this book. First things first, what I did like about House of Earth and Blood. God, I have to come over here. What I did like about House of Earth and Blood was the characters. I did really like getting to know the characters. I liked getting to know Bryce. I haven't read Throne of Glass. I haven't read the Throne of Glass series, and I won't be reading it until the new covers come out. But I did read the Actar series. So I don't know like the full like main girlies of the Sarah J. Maas universe, but I would say that Bryce is up there in one of my favorite female characters from Sarah J. Maas's books. I don't think she passes the love of my life, Nesta, but she's up there. She's strong. She is very brave. And she's a little bit sassy. I liked her sass a little bit. Did I like her use of the word alpha hole? No, not even like remotely. I didn't even like it. It was the worst thing ever. I hate that word. Why was it in there so much? I also liked learning about Hunt a little bit, although it was kind of a downside, which I'll get into a little bit. But Hunt as a character, and the idea of him, I think was great. I think him and Bryce's chemistry in this book and the will they, won't they, forced proximity, they worked really well. I don't know. He really warmed up to me. At first I was like, oh, he's going to be like grumpy, like character or whatever. But then like once him and Bryce really started to become friends, I really started to warm up to him. I do have some thoughts about the way his character develops, but Rune, though, number one Rune fan over here. I loved Rune from the beginning. Just him and like his development, I loved. He always had his like was putting his neck out for Bryce, but I think really towards the end, you could tell like he loves Bryce as a brother, and Bryce loves him as a sister. Like they love each other, and Rune is one of my favorite characters in this book. I loved reading from his point of view. I loved reading his storyline, and I am excited to see where he goes from second book on. Yeah, I thought most of the characters were actually very good characters, like in their archetypes. Another thing that I liked was the plot twists. So the plot twists in this book were insane, for the most part. I have some qualms with the drug deal plot twist, but I will get to that in the character development area. I think Sarah J. Maas did a very good job of setting up all of her plot twists. Once this book like picked up and things were happening, and plot twist after plot twist, Danica knew so much, and the synth, and Micah being the murderer, Bryce being Starborn, like so many things that I didn't catch up on or didn't catch through my first read, but upon kind of revisiting the book and thinking back on a lot of these plot twists, I was like, wow, Sarah J. Maas actually did a very good job of planting hints throughout the story of these plot twists. Like, for example, Micah being the murderer, when I first read it, I was like, really? Like, that's all you got? And then I thought back and I was like, well, that makes sense, because why was he in the alleyway during the murder? Why was he there? And why was he attacked by the demon? you know, like, I was like, that makes so much sense. And Bryce being Starborn with all of the hints of like the sword like humming in her presence, I was like, okay, that's weird. And then finally when it was revealed, I was like, oh my god, that makes so much sense. And it makes sense, like her and Rune are siblings, so yeah, of course, like if we found out that there could be multiple Starborn at once, and usually they're related, duh, makes sense. And with the oracles, like, you know, the Prince of Pit had told Bryce, like, who blinds an oracle? I was like, what the fuck do you do, Bryce? It's just her Starborn, like, light and shit. So, I think the plot twists in this book were great, which kind of goes into, like, goes into the mystery aspect of this book. I know this book isn't, like, a hardcore mystery, but it was, like, a good, like, whodunit, essentially. So the big things that I really liked were, like, the characters and really who they were, the plot twists, and the story aspect of the story. Now, what I didn't like about the book. I didn't like a lot of the character development. I felt like for Hunt, I didn't like Hunt's character development a whole lot. I think it had a little bit of a bumpy road, and I don't know if, like, when Sarah J. Maas, like, mapped out his character or something, if she just hit a wall and was like, you know what, he's gonna do a drug deal, like, that sounds good. Like, I don't know if, like, Sarah J. Maas just kind of couldn't think of anything, but I don't know, that just kind of pissed me off. I'm still kind of mad about it. So essentially, to backtrack in development, I did like Rune's development, and I did like, for the most part, Bryce's, but Hunt's is what really gets me. It just felt so out of character for him to do that, and there was no, like, hints towards it. Like, for a book that has really good hints towards plot twists, this one, like, the drug deal did not have good hints. Like, it just happened. And I don't know if she was, like, really trying to, like, surprise the reader, but it's like, I would rather somewhat kind of suspect it and then be right than just, like, be given, like, a complete out of character moment just to surprise me. And it kind of also felt like with Bryce and Hunt's relationship and the way that it developed, they kind of have, like, the kiss and make up syndrome, it feels like. And it gets worse in the second book, but, like, I don't know, it just felt like after Hunt had literally betrayed her, she was like, I'm gonna go sell myself to go save him. Like, I know we're on a time crunch because we're, like, in the third act, but I would not do that. I would not. I would be pissed. I would not go sell myself or try and buy someone for, like, millions of dollars. I would not. So, I don't know. I felt like that kind of fell flat, and it didn't really give me the outcome that I wanted. And it was, I don't know. I was kind of disappointed that I spent most of the third act actively pissed at Hunt. Like, up until he literally, like, basically saved Bryce and, like, hovered over her body, I was kind of like, fuck you, Hunt. Like, fuck you. I don't care about it. Fuck you. And, like, yes, towards the end, I was, like, crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, Hunt and Bryce, whatever. But I spent so much of the third act despising his ass because of what he did. So it's like, was it worth it? No, I don't think it was. So the other thing that I didn't like was the world building. I think the world itself and, like, the amount of care Sarah J. Maas put into, like, literally everything in this world, I think is astounding. The things that this world has is crazy. And I think she did a really good job of creating a world that you can fall into. However, I think she kind of jam-packed it a little bit too much. Like, why do we need a shifter of every fucking animal? Do we need lion shifters and fawn shifters? No. Like, that's why. I think also, like, the way that she presented the world building was so fatigued. Like, I was so fatigued after reading every time I read it, which was why it took me like 2 months to get to like the meat and bones of the book. And for so long, I didn't know if I was going to finish it. I was about ready to put it down, and I would have missed out on a good story just because of the way that it was presented to me. I think it kind of feels like sometimes Sarah J. Maas kind of forgets about the rule of like show, don't tell. Like she literally was just like telling and telling and telling and telling. And like for like a regular story that's set in like today's world, sure, I'll take it. But if you're giving me a whole fucking planet full of like magical beings and slavery and literally anything you can fucking think of, give a girl some time. Like I didn't need to know about so much about like the mer people until we met Therian. I felt like she just kind of wants to tell everything that she thought of, like she gets excited or something, but it's like, just wait a little bit, let my brain process, and then I'll take it. So yeah, those are kind of my likes and dislikes about the book. And truthfully, I'm rating this book a 4 out of 5 stars because I did like the book. I did really like it. I think it's up there for my favorite Sarah J. Maas books. My favorite all time, Court of Silver Flames. And I would honestly probably put Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood right under it as like number 2. I'll get into where House of Sky and Breath falls, but I honestly give this a 4 out of 5 stars. On Goodreads, like immediately after I finished the book, I gave it a 5 out of 5 because the ending was a banger. The ending was a fucking banger. You know, that was a pro, was the ending. Sarah J. Maas knows how to do an action-packed ending, you know, and I appreciate it. But it does have flaws, and, you know, I will finish the series once it comes out, but it's got some flaws. Like any writing, any type of, any book. There's no perfect book. But if you liked this video, feel free to subscribe. I kind of plan to do this for a lot of books because typically what I like to do is write Instagram reviews just to kind of get my thoughts out there for somewhere, for a book or whatnot. But Instagram has like a word limit, and I also like don't have really the mental capacity to write like a full review. So it's just nicer to talk about it. I feel like this helps me process my books. So I plan to do more for the books that I read. And yeah, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is Celeste Reads a Lot, where I post a lot of the books that I'm reading, my initial review of the books, just some fun things, you know, whatever. And if you want to follow me on Goodreads, I think my Goodreads is Celestello, Celestello. I'll have to check. But yeah, if you like this video, thanks for listening to me. I hope this was entertaining. All right, well, I'll see you in the next part. I can't guarantee when I'm gonna film that, but yeah. Thanks for watching. Happy reading, and I'll see you next time. Bye.